right, welcome back, everybody. We're here with Derek, and he's having trouble figuring out some of his locations for his stories. So, Derek, why don't you tell us about what you're struggling with?
Yeah, my story is a sports performance story involving curling, right? So
Okay.
I want to set it where curling happens, and in the U.S. it's either the northern U.S. essentially, New England, Minnesota, Wisconsin, or Canada, right?
Hmm.
And I'd like to create, most of it happens in a small city and in small towns where the curling takes place. And I want people to sort of have this like nice sort of cozy feel about it, get a sense of what it is. And I was trying to have curlers from all these different areas feel like they could relate to where the story is happening, right? So I
Okay.
was trying to create a fictional small city that could be located in New England. Maybe it's in Minnesota, maybe it's in Ontario, maybe it's in the prairies somewhere. It's never actually specified, right?
Okay.
And I
Uh-huh.
was picking sort of bits and pieces from all over Canada and the U.S. where curling happens and throwing them in to try to create this feeling. And it just wasn't working, right? Because I felt like it was just getting lost and it didn't appeal to anybody. I mean, like no, it was just bland in some ways.
Yeah.
I mean, thinking about it, that makes sense, right? It's you're trying to appeal to everybody. It's not work. So now I'm to the point where I'm like, okay, I need to narrow it down. And there are reasons to be in Canada. There are reasons to be in the U.S. Um, that's one decision. And then the other decision is, well, do I pick real places, right? Or do I keep a fictional city and say, I'm going to put it in New England, but if this is a fake town, it may be based on some other city. Maybe it's the real town. Do I use real curling clubs? Do I alter them? I can't, I mean, there's no location in real world that has all the things I want to have in my story, right? Because I have different things happening, on different levels of a curling club. But this city doesn't have multiple levels in the curling club. I need this size of curling club. I need, there's different things. There's no perfect place to set it. So I'm struggling with like, do I just make this up? In which case it's a lot of work, or do I like use real places and change my story? Do I use real places and try to twist them a little bit? So I'm curious to know what you have to say about it, or give me tips on how to make these decisions. If
Okay.
that makes sense. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, no, it does. So tell me this, when you talk about how there's a lot of different aspects that you want to put into the place and none of the real places have all of them, like what kinds of things are we talking about? What kinds of characteristics?
Yeah, so for example, curling is a lot bigger in Canada. So their big events are big, right? They're on national TV. They're in big arenas, right? So I want to have the uh, the the goal of this player to qualify for this big event, right? Which would
Okay.
mean have it in Canada. On the other side, the Canadian sort of playoff system is very well understood. It's very straightforward, right? Everyone knows what it is. In the U.S., it's a lot more. We do this, we'll do that. We change it from year to year. It's different in different regions. I can play with that. I can actually like do my own thing and make it sound realistic because that's feasible. That would happen in the U.S., right? So that's
Hmm.
one reason. Um, Another one is sort of the size of the curling clubs relative to the cities they're in, right? How well is curling known? I mean, in Canada, in some places in Minnesota, you have very small cities with very big curling clubs, and everyone curls, right? So you
Hmm.
just like the whole city just knows what's going on. The big event is going to be like a winter festival in a smaller town, and curling's a big part of it. You wouldn't really have that necessarily in like Boston, right? It would just sort of be
Right.
lost.
Okay.
But on the other side, most of my readers, may be in the U.S. U.S. is bigger. Curling is very popular when it comes to the Olympics. Um, you know, they don't know as much about curling, so placing it in Canada, may lose. They just may get lost there. I don't know. I'm sort of blabbering, but maybe you're
No, I
getting the thing.
understand. Okay, well, and I mean, really, what this is going to come down to is your preference, so it's not like a necessarily a best practices thing, but as you were talking, I think the number one thing. Okay, so first of all, let me say, don't overthink it. You're overthinking it a little bit here. You just need the stuff that will serve your
Yeah.
story, and it's completely understandable that we all overthink it, right? Um, but I think you need to, like you kind of just did, sit down and decide what characteristics you definitely want and that you definitely need. And then you can create, like you said, you can either make it a real place and just change things? Or, I mean, it sounds to me like you might want to create a fictional town that'll just serve you a little bit better. And that way you can give it those elements and those aspects. I think that it would be fairly easy to include the differences between Canadian and US curling. And that way, no matter which audience you get, they're understanding how it is in a place that's different than what they know. You know, and I mean, I do think that's one way in which you're maybe overthinking it a little, because I don't think you're going to lose readers in the US because you said it in Canada or vice versa. Just make sure and throw in explainers that tell, you know, this is how it is in the US. And you can even have maybe characters who are from Canada who are irritated about that, or, you know, it's a little bit confusing to them, or something like that. The other thing I was thinking of while you were talking is in Utah, we have a city called Wendover, and it is halfway in Utah and halfway across the state. And therefore, Utah, it's not actually legal to do gambling here in Utah, but people in Utah who want to gamble go to Wendover, because on the other side of the state line, there is gambling. So I'm almost wondering if you could create a fictional town that's like half in the US and half in the Canadian side, that's straddling the border, or even two towns that are close together and kind of interfunctionary, you know, and that way you would have a Canadian side and you would have a US side, and then you could kind of go back and forth depending on what you needed to satisfy your story.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting thought because regardless, it's going to be close to Canada anyway. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And you're right. I mean, I'm definitely overthinking this. I mean, I thought about I'm really thinking about all these things. I'm like, the story, a lot of this stuff doesn't matter, the story, because the story is about the main character and what he has to overcome in the competition and all these other, obstacles that get in his way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether that competition is really big like it is in Canada, or it's a smaller regional thing, or it's even a smaller little local thing, I don't think it's going to matter to the reader. I'm struggling with it because for me, I'm a curler and I want to make it as accurate as possible, right? So I'm
Right.
having trouble sort of letting go of that. So I
Yeah.
think I
Yeah.
think hearing that it's okay to let go of that
Mm-hmm.
is helpful.
Definitely. Well, and are you planning to make this a series, or is it a standalone?
I'm actually thinking of a series now. I'm thinking that, yeah, because as I've been writing it, I have there are a number of characters. The curling team has 4 characters, and you have opponents. So you have different people that you can sort of spin off and tell different stories
Right.
at
Right.
different times. So I'm starting to think of a little environment.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And I mean, you could start with something that's a smaller regional competition, and then in later books go on to other bigger,
yeah,
competitions in Canada, or, whatever you wanted to do. But yeah, no, I mean, going back to what you said, I've noticed this a lot. I actually had a friend that just went through this, who was writing something, and she was just obsessing about this little detail, and then she would get upset because she hadn't nailed it down yet. And then she started telling me the rest of her story, and I went, okay, that thing you're obsessing about is such a tiny part of your story. It's really, you've got to stop overthinking it. And I noticed that authors do this. We tend to obsess about the details, which, like you said, are not even the biggest impact on the story. And usually that's because we are dealing with some sort of insecurity of our own, and we're just having trouble, like you said, letting it go and just letting the story come. So I also think that maybe you could be putting the cart before the horse here. Maybe you won't really nail down, what the setting is going to be until you know exactly what the character's journey is and all of the plot events. I don't know, unless you already know what those are. But you might just want to, in my in my critique group, we call them brackets, and we'll put brackets around what we haven't figured out yet. So it'll be like, and then he said something really cool that would make sense here, you know what I mean? And then we go
yeah,
on. So you might almost just want to bracket the setting a little bit here and make sure you get through the story, and then say, okay, so what setting do I need to support the story that I've come up with? And then you can, figure out, tailor the setting to the story rather than the story to the setting. Does that make sense?
yeah. That's a good point. Most of I mean, I have most of the story, you know, outlined and a lot of it written. And the setting I've flipped back and forth. So if somebody were to read it, they would be like, "Whoa, what's going on?" Like I suddenly I was in Canada and now I'm in the U.S. Right? Like just sort of this warping thing. So that's where I'm struggling with. But that's a good point, right? I mean, I had these things. I had scenes in my head like, "Oh, I would love to have this scene happen here."
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure I actually asked the question of, but does that serve my story, right? Like, what, how can I use the setting to serve my story? I think is a good question. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I should go back and think about what, yeah, what, what could the setting add to this?
If you have a great idea for a story premise, but you don't know where you're going with it, if you're having a really hard time filling in plot events or finishing your current WIP, or if you're constantly worried that your story is boring or dragging or that your readers won't like it, then I encourage you to join the legendary Fiction Forge, my monthly membership for fiction authors. Inside, I will give you the complete A to Z blueprint for how to write highly emotional stories that your readers will absolutely fall in love with, no matter what your genre or tropes are. Want to become a widely read, highly paid master storyteller? Then join us in the legendary Fiction Forge and finally get that epic story that's been knocking around in your brain forever out to the world.
Can you do things with the setting to actually like I guess move the story forward or add obstacles or
Mm-hmm. That's actually something that I teach. When I'm teaching people to, you know, craft their book, craft their whole novel, I always tell them, if you really want, there are stories where the setting just isn't that big a part of the story, and that's fine. But if you really want a powerful setting that's a very integral part of the story, then it needs to trip your character up a little bit. In fact, I've got a podcast I just did about this, but it may not be live yet. Yeah, I almost feel like your setting needs to be a stumbling block for your character. So
yeah.
if you're looking for some conflict and okay, I need to ratchet up, something here, could you put them in a setting that blocks them in some way from their goals, that just makes it harder for them to accomplish whatever they're trying to accomplish? Maybe you want to explore, again, the curling in one area, but then they get blocked by something there and they go, okay, we're going to have to go somewhere else in order to figure this out. And so they move to another area, and you know what I mean? Like
Yep.
anything you want. But yeah, I definitely think if you want a really heavy setting, the kind of setting where the setting is a character in the story, then it needs to be interacting with the characters and especially with their story goals, creating conflict for them. It can also create support for them in various ways, that's going to have things
Right.
that trip them up and then things that'll actually be advantageous to them. But I mean, that's what that's what the setting as a character would do. It's got to have interaction on both sides.
Yeah. I should actually ask that question to see what I want.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are a couple main decisions I still need to make. Which of the two cities he lives in, and I guess see what additions it can make to the story by choosing one versus choosing the other one, as opposed to
Right.
just the.
Well, yeah, and ask that specifically, like what would be the advantages, especially about what he's trying to accomplish by living here, and what would be the disadvantages. It would almost be better, I would think, to create more conflict, to put him in the least advantageous place he could be so that he has to do more work and go looking and work hard to get what he wants, because it's not just right in front of him where he's at.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's good. A lot of good food for thought.
Is there anything else you want to talk about? Anything else I can help you with?
Uh,
Anything
I mean,
else you're
that aside from overthinking all these details and putting a lot of little things in. Well, so now sticking with not just location but also setting and scene, right? I'm not the best at writing description. I'm not going to write flowery. So let's just take a curling club, right? Things happen in a curling club. I can picture the inside of the curling club because I've been in thousands of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what details and sort of at what level to explain on the page to put the reader in there so they actually feel like they're in the room rather than just sort of like, they're in the curling club, right? And there's ice. And I mean, if you have any advice on, where to go for, resources or, I mean, I've been doing a lot of reading, just trying to get examples of what other people do for things. But
Yeah, for sure. I do think it's interesting that you said no flowery descriptions, and I honestly think that's the difference between men and women. And your audience is probably going to be mostly, I mean, it's going to be anybody who's curling, but men do tend to write more for men and women more for women. Nothing wrong with that at all. It's just the way we are. And women do tend to have more of the feelings and more of the flowery descriptions. But what I notice is that men their version of that is more like thoughts and reactions. So when you're describing something, first of all, there's the five sensory experience. That actually does create more emotion in your reader than most people think, because memories are always tied to emotion. So even if it's not some over the top, super happy, super sad, whatever, it's just the emotion of how we're feeling in that memory. So if you can use the five sensory experience, what that's doing is it's bringing memories to the reader of, the obvious example is like, that exercise where we imagine biting into a lemon and then we salivate. Obviously, that doesn't make us super emotional, happy, sad. It's just the memory of biting into a lemon and how we feel about that, right? So if you can use the five senses, it actually does trigger like sense memories for the reader. And that is going to really ground them in the experience. So if you are trying to describe a curling club and you have a character walk in, just think about what they would see and what they would observe. What is on the walls? What is on the ground? Give us the size of the place. But also, what do they smell? What does it smell like? Does the ice have a smell? How cold is it? Just whatever they're experiencing. And as long as you do that, you should be fine. Just don't go overboard. Obviously, we don't need 17 different, descriptions every single time. Just pick 2 or 3 that are relevant. And I always say we need to be able to visualize what they're seeing. So if you just say, oh, he walked in and there was ice, that doesn't help us visualize it. Like, describe it in a way that would help us visualize it. And then the other thing is, what are his thoughts about it? What are his reactions to it? It doesn't have to be deep feelings, but is this, somewhat comforting because it's familiar to him? Is this different than other clubs he's been in, and why? You know what I mean? Just have him have a reaction, a sentence or two, to what he is observing. And if you can do those 2 things, describe what he's observing and give his reaction to it, that's a perfect description right there.
Great, thanks. That's good. I mean, I focused so far a lot on sight, right, and using the other ones, and then actually adding his reactions to it, I think will help. I can see how
Yeah.
that would add another sort of layer, and then help the reader sort of get a sense as to what it is.
Mm-hmm. And it helps us be in the character's head, which we want, right?
Yeah, yeah, yep, yep. So that's good.
Good, good.
Yeah, those are the main things right now. I mean, in terms, I'm sure there's still plot things I need to figure out, but that's I'm getting there. It's really a
Yeah.
matter of trying to get the reader to feel like it's there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'm working also on motivation, helping the reader understand what all these things mean. And I don't know if I've done enough of the interior aspect of that. I mean, I've done a lot of it in dialogue. I think it's come out, which may or may not feel forced,
Mm-hmm.
like unnatural. Like, would people really talk about that? I mean, some cases they would, some cases they wouldn't. Oh,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I guess back to describing things.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the the other thing I'm going to struggle with is curling is how to describe the sport to people, right? I can't do
Right.
it in dialogue because these people are curlers. I mean,
Right.
they wouldn't actually describe it to each other. I don't really in this book. I don't have a beginner, right?
Okay.
To sort of teach the sport to, which then would inform the reader. Um, so I'm trying to figure out how to interleave some of these, here's what the sport is. Um, I've also thought of writing an appendix written from one of the secondary characters' points of view, because he's a social media guy and he talks to all these people who don't do curling, right? So
Mm-hmm.
maybe it makes sense to actually have him do a little bit of explanation at the back. If somebody ever wanted to read it, they could read it. But otherwise, I still need to include all this stuff in the book itself. Um,
So I think you could do a couple of things. I think the appendix is a good idea, but if this social media character, he's part of the story though, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, I think that could be your answer. I mean, first of all, I think you could throw in, I mean, obviously you're trying not to info dump and do like 3 pages explaining curling, but you could throw in a sentence or 2 here and there and have it be fine, and it can be narrative. So if he's practicing, you can just say, oh, he did X, Y, and Z so that this happened. You know what I mean? And it would just,
Okay.
little bit by bit explaining what he's doing in the sport. But the other thing you could do is you could have this guy talk to them about what he's going to post on social media, and maybe, write a scene where he's asking them and he's going, look, I'm posting this for people who don't know what curling is, so help me explain how I would explain this to a layman. Or he could post something and they could read it, and read what he wrote about curling and have a reaction to that, or something like that. So I think you could use that maybe too.
That's a good idea. I like that because he's not the main character. I only have one point of view, right? So it's not his. Um, I don't ever actually talk. I talk about how the characters react to what he's doing because he's always filming things in the middle of games and always fiddling with things, and he's being distracted, right? And
Right.
they don't like that because he's not in the game. But I don't actually have them respond to anything that he actually posts or stuff, and that's a good idea. I could actually use him to get some information across and have their response to it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, whatever he posts, yeah, I can think of ideas as to how to make that interesting and actually
Yeah.
add conflict and I like
Mm-hmm.
that. That's great.
Good.
Yeah, that's super. Thanks.
Good. Yeah, of course. And I mean, in terms of you mentioned that you weren't sure if you'd done all the internal. Um, Sometimes I find that we tend to get in our heads about it and we tend to be a little bit nebulous about it, especially while we're trying to do the writing. So I've had experiences where I'm trying to nail down, whatever it is, what somebody believes or how they're feeling about something. And I just can't do it while I'm also trying to write the scene because I've got 1,000 balls in the air that I'm trying to juggle. So sometimes what's helpful is just to sit down, either at your word processor or with a paper and pen, and just ask yourself, how do they feel about this, or what are they trying to accomplish? And if you can like pull it out of your head, out of the swirling all the swirling information in your head, and like really nail it down and put it on paper, then it's much easier to communicate it in the story. So if you're a little bit nebulous on some of the motivations or some of the internal stuff, try that. Just
Yeah, for a journal
read through
the
the rest of the
kind of thing,
story.
and
Yeah, just really
yeah,
nail it down.
that'd be good. Cool.
All right.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. This has been very helpful.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Well, thanks for being on here with me today. We kind of need to wrap up. Any last questions or anything that you need?
No, thanks. I mean, this has been very helpful. I really appreciate it. I appreciate all the resources you provide. I have watched a number of them. So
Oh, good. I'm
thank you
glad.
very much.
Well, good luck. This sounds like a fun story. So, best of luck with getting it where you want it to be.
Hey, thank you.
All right. See you later. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.